Hello readers, we're continuing with the sign of the beaver. This video will be chapters 20 and 21 because chapter 20 is pretty short. Okay. For the next few days, Matt waited eagerly. Early in the morning, he finished his chores so that at a word from Attean, he would be ready to set out for the Indian village again. But Attean did not come. Matt resolved to be patient, but day by day, his new confidence began to slide away. Perhaps he had only imagined that he had passed a test. In Attean's eyes, perhaps he had failed. It was a week before Attean came, and the moment Matt saw him, he knew there would be no invitation. The Indian boy was solemn and unsmiling, looking more like his grandfather than ever before. He sat staring at the book Matt opened, his mind painfully miles away. He did not want to listen to a story. He seemed to have forgotten the words he had learned the week before. "I not remember," he said impatiently. "My grandfather teach me many thing." "What sort of thing?" Attean did not answer. "Time of hunt comes soon," he said finally. Matt felt suddenly hopeful. Perhaps it was not any failure of his own that he had caused Attean to stay away. Every year Attean had told him, when the leaves had fallen from trees, the Indians hunted the caribou and the great moose. Whole families move away from the village to follow the trail of the big animal. Matt knew that more than anything in the world, Attean longed to go hunt with the men. He could imagine now how Attean must have been staying close to his grandfather these last days, trying to be useful and to prove that he was fit to be one of them. "I not come tomorrow," Attean added. "Maybe long time." "You're going on the hunt?" Matt tried hard to keep the envy out of his voice. Attean shook his head. "I go to find my Manitou." Matt was puzzled. A Manitou? Another word for moose? "Maybe you call spirit," Attean explained. "All Indian boy must have Manitou. It is time for me." "How can you find a spirit?" For a moment, Matt thought this was one of Attean's odd jokes, but he had never seen his friend so serious, even troubled. "My grandfather teach me," Attean repeated. "Manitou come in dream." Then, seeing that Matt was not laughing, that he really wanted to understand, Attean went on, trying to explain in his clumsy English a mystery that could not truly be explained at all. "Every Indian boy must have a Manitou," he said, "before you can take his place as one of the men in his family. He had to find it for himself. No one could help him. His grandfather had been training him for many days. He had to learn many things. Now he must take the test. He would go out into the forest alone. First, he would make a special preparation, bathe himself carefully, and take a special medicine to make him clean inside and out. Then he would go far into the forest and build himself a wigwam of branches. He would stay there alone for many days. He would not eat anything at all, even berries. After sundown, he would drink a little water from a brook. He would sing the song that his grandfather had taught him and repeat the ancient prayers of his people so that his heart would be worthy. If he did all this, if he waited faithfully, one day his Manitou would come to him. Then he could go back to his village. He would have a new name. He would be a man and a hunter. "What would it be like, this Manitou?" Matt questioned. There was no way to know, Attean told him. It could come in many ways. In a dream, he might see a bird or an animal or even a tree. He might not see anything at all. Instead, he might hear a voice speaking to him. There would be no mistake. When it came, Attean would recognize that it was meant for him. What if the Manitou should not come? Instantly, Matt was ashamed of his question. A dark shadow had crossed Attean's face. There was something in his eyes that Matt had never seen there before. Sadness, and more than that, fear. "I wait," Attean said, "till he come. I can never be hunter." Matt could think of nothing at all to say. He felt shut away from his friend in a way that even his boy's scorn had never made him feel. This was something he could not understand or share. If he finds his Manitou, he thought, he will go with the men. He may never come here again. "You'll come back afterwards, won't you?" he asked anxiously, though he knew in his heart that he would never be the same. "I come back," Attean promised. Walking in the nights that followed, Matt pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders. It must be very cold in the forest. He could not get Attean out of his mind. What would it be like, sitting in a shelter just waiting, growing hungrier every day and more afraid? Because there was no doubt Attean had been afraid. Matt was sure of that. Attean was afraid he might fail, that he might have to return to the village and admit that his Manitou had not appeared. For Attean, this would be a disgrace, a shame that must be terrible. If the thought of it had brought fear into his eyes, even though he dreaded that it would mean the end of all their adventures, Matt hoped that Attean would find his Manitou. Wow, you know what that's called? That's called a rite of passage. In a culture, when you have to do something before you can be considered an adult, it's called a rite of passage. Do you think Attean is right in feeling fearful? You know, this is something that's out of his control. He can't control when a spirit or a feeling or a vision comes to him. I guess that's when you just have to have faith. But it's interesting when Matt said, kind of like he wondered what it would be like to sit in a shelter day after day just waiting. Well, isn't that kind of what Matt's doing? Matt, to some degree, has done this. You know, he's survived on his own. He's kept up chores. He's kept up the corn crop. He's fed himself. He needed help along the way, some of it with, Attean teaching him the ways of the forest, but a lot of it he did on his own. So maybe Matt's kind of going through a rite of passage to some degree. So maybe as we read chapter 21, we hope that Attean will find his Manitou. And then I wonder what's happening to Matt. What's Matt going to do? Right? Then one morning, Attean returned. Oh my gosh, he did. Okay, page 110. Then one morning, Attean returned. Matt had been waiting, watching the forest trail impatiently, unwilling to go far from the cabin lest he miss the boys coming. But when he finally saw Attean approaching, his heart sank. Attean was not alone. Oh. His grandfather stalked by his side. Matt sensed that this meant trouble. Perhaps Saskinus had come to reproach him. He would surely know that the two boys had been neglecting those lessons. Dreading to face the old man, Matt walked out to meet him, courteously giving the greeting he had learned. Saskinus returned his greeting with dignity. He did not smile. His solemn face made Matt's heart sink still lower. Then, startled, Matt turned towards Attean. He did not dare to ask a question, but he saw at once that there was no need to ask, no doubt about it. Attean had found his Manitou. He had changed. He stood straighter and taller. He looked older, and Matt suddenly realized why. The black hair, which had always hung straight down almost to his shoulders, was shaved away. His scalp, like his grandfather's, was bare, except for a single patch running back from his forehead and braided into a top knot, fastened in red string. Like the fresh bear grease that glistened on his skin, pride glistened all over him. Moreover, he carried a gleaming new rifle. "You've got a gun," Matt cried, politeness forgotten. "My grandfather traded many beaver skins," Attean answered. Though he had in those last days become a man, he had not learned altogether to hide his feelings. He did not say more. He waited now for his grandfather to speak. The old man's face was grave, but he did not ask about the lessons. "Time of sun gets shorter," he said. "Like footsteps of bird, soon ice on water." "I know it's October," Matt said. "Maybe November?" He had not wanted to count the sticks these last weeks. "Indian go north now." Saskinus continued. "Hunt moose, all Indians go. Attean not come more to learn white man's signs." Matt could not answer. "White father not come," Saskinus went on. Matt spoke quietly. "He ought to be here any day now." Saskinus looked at him soberly. "Maybe him not come," he said quietly. Anger flared up in Matt. He could not allow this man to speak the fear he had never dared to admit to himself. "Of course he'll come," he said too loudly. "He might even come today." "Snow come soon," Saskinus persisted. "Not good white boy stay here alone. White boy come with Indians." Matt stared at him. Did he mean go on the hunt with them? The most important hunt of the year? Like, this writing almost makes me want to cry. Like, I'm so sad. I'm proud that Attean found his Manitou, but I'm also sad because it changes. It changes things for him and Matt. He can't kind of be this careless boy wandering around the forest, catching and fishing and, marking trails. Saskinus smiled for the first time. Saskinus reached White Boy's hut, moose like a 10. Saskinen teach White Boy hunt moose like a 10. White Boy and a 10 be like brother. Aww. A sudden joyful hope sprang into Matt's mind. He realized at this moment just how anxious he had been. This was a way out. He did not have to stay here alone through the long winter. Then, as swiftly as it had come, this new hope died away. In spite of his longing, in spite of being afraid, he knew what he had to answer. Thank you, he said. I'd like to go on the hunt, but I can't do that if, when my father comes, he wouldn't know where I had gone. Leave white man's writing. Matt swallowed hard. Something might happen to the cabin. He's trusting me to take care of it. Maybe him not come, Saskinus said again, not smiling now. He'll be here soon, Matt insisted. He was ashamed that his voice broke in the middle of the word. If he couldn't come, he'd send someone to tell me. He'd find some way, no matter what happened. You don't know my pa. Saskinus was silent for some time. White Boy, good son, he said at last. But better you come. Saskinus glad for White Boy that's a hard Native American word. Matt could only keep shaking his head. The man's words had brought a great lump in his throat. Thank you, he managed to say. You've been very good to me, but I have to stay here. Oh my gosh. This writer is just kind of taking all this emotion. Like, they're really making me feel something. This, to me, feels like we're getting to the climax of that story, that aha moment where, all the parts of the story start coming together on that story mountain. Without another word, Saskinus held out his hand. Matt put his own hand into the bony grasp. Then the two Indians turned and went away. Attean had not even said goodbye. There would be no lessons that morning, no story, no tramping in the forest, no fishing, not this morning or any other morning. Close to panic, Matt wanted to run after them. He wanted to tell them that he had changed his mind, that he would go with them anywhere rather than stay here alone with winter coming on. But he set his jaw tight and stood where he was. After a few minutes, he reached for his axe and fell to splitting logs in fury. He couldn't keep from thinking, however, was he just being foolish and stubborn? Wasn't going with them the wisest thing he could have done? Wouldn't his father have understood? He remembered hearing that many white men, and white women too, who had been captured by the Indians and had to live many years in the wilderness, did not want to return to the white world when they had a chance, but had chosen instead to live with the Indians. He had never understood that, but now he could see very well how it might happen. He no longer distrusted them. He knew that Attean and his grandfather would be kind, and even the grandmother would make him welcome, and that they would share with him whatever they had, no matter how little. He had found friendship and goodwill in their cabin. He had envied Attean his free, unhampered life in the forest, and the boisterous camaradership in the village. Camaradership is like friendship and brotherhood. If he had been taken captive as a child and raised as an Indian boy, how would he himself have chosen? It wouldn't be the same to make that choice deliberately. He was proud that they had wanted him to live with them, but he knew that he could never really be proud, as Attean was proud of being a hunter. He belonged to his own people. He was bound to his own family, as Attean was bound to his grandfather. The thought that he might never see his mother again was sharper than hunger or loneliness. It was the land his father had cleared to make a home for them. It was his land, too. They could not run away. He was troubled that Attean had walked away without a word or farewell. Had he been offended? Had he really wanted Matt to go with them? To be a brother? Or was he obeying his grandfather as he had to do about the lessons? It was so hard to tell what Attean was thinking. Attean had become a hunter. He had a gun. He would not have time now to wander through the forest or to listen to stories. He would not have to bother any longer with the white boy, who would never really be a mighty hunter. But surely Attean could have held out his hand, as his grandfather had done. Wow, what a chapter. I really do feel that this may have been, we're going to have to read on, but I really do feel this may have been the climax to the story, that aha moment, the top of the story. You know, Matt was faced with a great choice. Does he stay here and try to uphold his house and his homestead, or does he go where he knows he'll be cared for and safe? And when Saskison said that they would be brothers, that is so super powerful to me. I love it. I love this. Might be my favorite chapter. Okay, we will start with chapter 22 on the next video. I hope you're excited as I am.